But I seriously like that we can see each other on video. It helps out.
Yeah, I've never seen you in video form, which is it's really weird to say because I know you in person, but I've never seen you on a camera aside from the videos. Well, that's different. I've never interacted with you this way.
Yeah, interacting like this is a trip. Yeah, it really is. But all right, hello and welcome to what happens when Todd and John have way too much time on their hands. We're gonna go ahead and basically do our own little equivalent of a little forum, just talking about stuff and cataloging it as we go forward through all this stuff. But yeah, I'm John and this is Todd.
This is Todd. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you doing, John?
I'm doing well. Long day.
Today's been a good day.
Yeah. Long but good day. Productive, for sure. But it's been kind of weird, right? My days have been like blending together. I swear to you, I woke up today and I was like, it's Friday.
That was me last week. I thought it was Thursday 3 days in a row, and neither of those 3 days were Thursday.
I think under normal circumstances, this would just be Gabe's role. But I feel like we're all starting to get to Gabe as we get into this. So that kind of brings us up to what we're going to kind of go through. We don't have a name for this, but we do have general segments that we kind of want to keep up. The first one being what we want to call the adaptation. With what we're going through with COVID and stuff, I'm finding out, as many of us are, that we're having to change, right? And there's some changes that are coming about. And we want to talk about that and kind of trial it as we're going through it, because I've definitely experienced change in my work, and I think you have too, right? Yeah, you have, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. By all means, go ahead. And what are the changes that you know? How do you want to start that?
For me, it was for me, I'm no longer leaving the house unless it's critical. And now, instead of lecturing, right, I'm an educator in Texas. And now, instead of seeing my students face to face, right now I'm doing all this digitally. So my streaming world as a gamer has united with my world as a educator, and it is the weirdest thing I never would have predicted. But yeah, and you have some too, right? And that's funny because you're linked to gaming as well, right? We both are. That's one of the ways that we interact a lot.
Yeah, so I work in retail. At least not at the moment.
I'll say worked, good sir. You're not currently working in retail.
Yes. Yes, but of course the circumstances were something that we couldn't avoid. So for me, it was basically that things weren't working out there, and I just didn't feel that what was happening at the time was taken that seriously, And I can understand that from a perspective of, well, it's not here yet, right? It's somewhere else.
Talking about COVID?
Yes.
All right, yeah.
It's coming here.
Oh, sure. Well, so here, right? So you're in the Rio Grande Valley. I'm in.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, so
you're good.
I'm in the Rio Grande Valley.
We're gonna stumble over these,
we will,
over and over. But yeah, you're in the Rio Grande Valley. I'm in the greater Austin area, and so it's kind of a trip to see how this stuff is hitting, right? Because I mean, it was definitely slower to break the RGV bubble.
Yeah, and I think it's still in that process. I think people are taking it a little more seriously now. There's a lot more urgency to how people are handling it or how they're trying to handle it. And for me, it was simply, I just had to take leave, for my own safety. And I have an immediate family member that works in the medical field. And I was trying to basically understand the risks of, I don't want to bring it back with me. And then vice versa, and that seemed it was just an action that I had to take.
And I totally get that, because that's something that the universities have kind of been dubbed, essential, which of course, right, these schools will remain open and everything's kind of moving forward in that realm. But in going out and going to the university, right, as soon as they cut out for a break, we had our first confirmation of a student. And then we have confirmation of faculty, right? And so now it's contained and stuff like that, and HIPAA and everybody's privacy is being held, but at the same time doctors are tracing that back, and so our experience is very minimal, right? But you and I are both looking towards New York, which I watch the governors briefings pretty much every day, every other day, from New
Same.
York. Not only that, but keeping ears to the ground of what's going on in like Italy, what's going on in Spain, what's going on
Or some
around a
type
bunch
of
of
place.
places. I can definitely see why you can't jump to
Yeah,
the
it's
curve.
okay.
'Cause I jumped out real quick because I mean that's might have actually started working on that, right? Because everyone's slow to start. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was really interesting because I was watching a program where they had the governor of Washington on, and the way he approached it, he basically took it seriously the moment that they figured out what was happening. And I believe, and I didn't look at this up, but I think their numbers are significantly lower in comparison to places like New York, Louisiana, Florida, right?
Sure.
And that response was something that I wish local government here, kind of took to. They're taking to it now. There are strict kind of measures in place that forces people to sacrifice certain things in their lives, but it's for their health. It's for the health of their families and their neighbors, and it's important.
Yeah, we see some statistics out there and models showing that this thing has like a 4% lethality rate, which is in comparison to a lot of other stuff ridiculously high. And then in comparison to level the playing field there, in comparison to like smallpox, not that huge, but still when we're talking about the populations we have, like you said, like how many people live with others who work in the medical field, and not only that, but how many people are immunocompromised, which is a huge factor. Which it sucks. It sucks that they didn't kind of like help you out in that context and make you feel safe. You're not the only person that we know, though. We know some people in common that had to deal with that too. That their workplace wasn't giving them enough, like basically PPE, right? Personal protective equipment. But now they're doing that. It's kind of an interesting thing to talk about too, because of like the difference between rural and urban areas, in the sense of how they're reacting to it. Yeah. What are your thoughts on all that stuff?
So I definitely think that in rural areas, I've definitely seen people talk about it, and it's for a lot of those people, it's like, well, some of them already kind of do isolation pretty well because they're separate from like a city, they're separate, they're pretty far from their neighbors. But obviously in these areas, it's much more difficult to get medical attention. Hospitals in those kind of areas are at a bare minimum. I'd imagine a lot of them are in supplies. I would hope not, but
No,
that's
but we're
clearly
talking
going to
about
be the case.
No, I definitely saw to your point. I definitely saw like some type of a thing out there talking about how many places have an ICU, right? How few places have an ICU. We're talking about places that are outside of the major metropolitan areas. Yeah. And so that's why this whole notion of trying to save the health system is the major point, right? It's not saying that we can't deal with these numbers in a perfect world, right? But this isn't a perfect world. We don't have, every bed for every person. And so all of that has led us to this, what feels like a screeching halt of the economy, which brings with it let's talk about this correctly, right? It was the virus creating a reality that we need to stay at home. And though our economy is essentially fine, the fears that came from this dropped the economy, which in trying to stop this or stop the spread, we slow people leaving. And that kind of just diminishes this trust, right, in the economy. And then the economy kind of plummets in correlation to this COVID stuff. It's a trip.
I find it interesting that is the way that people reacted. It was like the economy first, and then they kind of thought about the well-being of the people.
Yeah, no, for
secondary.
Sure. Yeah, hey man, time is money, right? I mean, I do want to say, so kind of get into this for those of you who have maintained your interest this long. All of this is to say that we want to talk about the adaptation that we're going to have to go through in dealing with this stuff and pushing forward. So like one of our segments will be like the adaptation, where we're just talking about what we're adapting to. And even post-COVID, which is a wonderful time to think about, and it'd be interesting to think about when that actually comes to us, right? But post-COVID, we can actually see what other things life, allows us to adapt to or forces us to adapt to. But right now it's COVID.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I'll tell you what I've been doing more. I've been cooking a lot more.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I have gone out. I have gone out to pick up food and stuff, but I definitely found myself getting like a bunch of like feel good meals and things that reminded me of like the Valley, or I even went into that infamous Latin food section up here and just got a bunch of good stuff. Like it made me crave a lot of stuff that I couldn't have anymore, which was just stuff from the Valley. Like what used to be a simple 4.5 drive, right? And think about that simple 4.5 drive, but still in that notion, I could make it whenever I want. And now,
Right.
we can't do that anymore.
Yeah, you kind of have to go out of your way to do it or risk something.
Risk
It's really
a
interesting
ticket.
because in terms of food, like for me, it's like I wasn't really big on like eating out a lot. But it's interesting how when you don't have those things is when you crave them the most. And I find myself craving Whataburger a whole lot.
That's pretty
And
funny. Yeah.
I haven't had fast food in like 3 weeks.
It's crazy though, like how much you start to crave certain things. And like did I tell you this? I think we might have said it in the stream chat. But I cannot wait to go out in public and have like chips and salsa or chips and queso and not think about like contaminant factors. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
not having to worry about who the hell made my damn chips. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, which is something you should always have in your mind, right? You should be aware of health concerns and where you get your food and all that in the nth. But crap, man, like there's a bunch of stuff we took for granted, like for real.
We definitely took a lot for granted. And something I guess inadvertently that I took for granted was cooking. And now that's different though. That's something I can engage in now because I'm at home more.
Yeah.
I went off and bought ingredients that I haven't purchased in a long time. Doing way more cooking. I really enjoy cooking breakfast now without feeling a time constraint that I have to get to work really quickly. So
Yeah,
that's
right.
a nice little benefit.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna also say is that like this, so like this chat, this stuff that Todd and I are doing is really like it's a benefit of how lucky we are to be ahead of this curve, far ahead of like New York and all that, and us being able. So part of us are gonna experience a pretty rough time through COVID, right? And then there's going to be a lucky amount of us who, though we have our troubles, right, we're going to have the odd luxury of adapting, right? Because the alternative would be a bit more fatal, right? And so
Yeah.
this is a really interesting kind of switch, is that we're lucky to just have to adapt, right? As much as it's tough, right? I'd still think we're lucky in comparison to the other reality.
We are, and something else is that in that adaptation, I've found that I've had to just more simple tasks in the past have just become a little more tedious. For example, buying food in general, these ingredients I'm using to make my breakfast in the morning. I go to the store, pick them up, I come home, I take them. I have like a tarp out on the porch, and I wipe them down every single thing.
I'm glad you brought that up because I've even started doing that too, and I did that earlier on, but then I there's a little bit of a laxing, I guess, that came about. But no, I started doing it today, and then we're talking about that too. Now I started doing the doorknobs, right, and the locks and stuff. So for what he's talking about, right, is that a good quarantine tip is
Exactly what it is.
so quarantine tip, right, is you bring some food over, right, and so we found out that not only COVID, right, but a bunch of other stuff can live on those boxes, cardboard, plastics, anything, right, like styrofoam. It can live for different hours on different substances, different materials, and so with that we're being cautious and we're wiping everything down. You're using a bleach solution, right? I'm using an antibacterial, which is to destroy the protein shell of the virus, right? You still might end up getting a virus, but it's like weak and like on its last leg.
Right.
But when I bring everything in, like I wash everything out. Now you do the whole tarp stuff, right? So because you have way more property than I do. So like I can't just like, I don't have a tarp, nor do I have like the space to spread everything out like that. But you actually like lay it out on a tarp and spray it all.
Yeah, so I put it on the back porch and I spread everything out, and one by one, I start shifting stuff over. So what I did initially was I would clean something and then take it inside. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to separate an area for the things that are sterilized and taken care of, and then slowly pick from there. But it turned into what you would usually take, getting groceries and unpacking them at home. It took what would take maybe 5-10 minutes to maybe like 45 or like 30 minutes.
No, for real. And that's that. I'm only shopping for one. So I'm in an easier situation. I mean, I'm still separated from a lot of the people that I know and stuff, but I have some good friends nearby, and thankfully technology is helping out. But when when I go shopping, it's pretty much a real quick and easy thing for me. Whereas now it actually is a little bit of a process because so I don't have that, right? But I do have kind of an area I've designated as the no touchy. You know what I mean? Like whatever's in there, you do not touch. And it's basically I just pull that stuff out, put it in the counter in segments. I have gloves on when I do this, and I just spray the outside of whatever it is for a little bit, and then I wipe it all down. And then I go ahead and place them in. There are better ways to do it depending on what you're doing. For some, be sure of like what type of chemical you're using to clean that stuff. And it's an abundance of caution, right? If you wash your hands and if you do all this stuff, you can reduce like the contaminant factors ridiculously, right? It'll be a good situation in that context. You've saved yourself quite a bit of probability. But what you and I are doing are like a little bit further.
Yeah. And I would just add that I think that mentality and that routine, which only really started 3 weeks ago, but I think it started for me faster than people around me that I care about were quick to assume that it was like overreaction.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that.
Because in normal context, it would be. That's kind of what has me intrigued about all this is that I now feel like, germophobia isn't so out of the realm. You know what I mean? I have some counseling history, though I've never seen a client with germophobia. I've definitely seen the anxiety that could develop such a neuroses, such a focus. And just in a normal context, it would be neurotic, right? To just be, forever fixated on these microscopic, things that,
or can be fatal to you.
Yeah, but we take that for granted all the damn time. Like it's something that we're always in contact with, right? Everything's a chemical. Bacteria and all this other stuff is something that we are biomes, right? We are bacteria, but now the game has kind of changed, and it has because of what this stuff is, what COVID seems to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad though that now people are taking it more seriously, but having that mentality early on, and then especially having an immediate family member in the medical field.
Oh, for sure.
It was so much like for her, it was just a normal thing for them. The process of washing their hands correctly and cleaning things constantly was already kind of a norm in my household. But now it's something that I've adopted where I've become responsible for that as well, to an extent where
it's like a family thing. It's a communal thing.
Yeah.
Like it's
exactly.
It's the equivalent of taking out the trash. Like and which is, again, that's what I'm saying. Like this is an odd thing. The reason as to why we included this, for anyone listening again, right? The reason why we included this is because we feel this is going to be something that we're going to continue to adapt to for a while. And so since it's going to be there for a little bit, we might as well just admit it as a function of what we're doing. So we want to kind of have a forum to be able to talk about how we're changing, because we're not the only ones dealing with this change. I wanted to say for anyone listening to this, if you're extroverted and it sucks that you're inside and you can't handle that, this is where it helps us to be introverted. I'm not as on the fringe as I feel some of my friends might be. Those people who like run out to kind of do something to get their mind away from whatever it is that they're focused on. No shame in one way or another. I'm not trying to say a value judgment whatsoever, but now's the time to reach out to your extroverted friends and make sure that everyone's all right, because some people, quelled their thoughts in a different way, and now some of those avenues are gone, man.
Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of people in the same boat, and me, I'm on the other side. Like bit of an introvert, so this is not necessarily something new. The only difference is that I don't have a choice, and before I did, it's definitely helped me adapt better. I haven't gone, I'm not itching to like get out or anything. I get enough sun when I go out and I, walk my dog and stuff, and I do get some exercise, which is really important. You should definitely do that if you can safely.
Yeah, no, I've
Um,
started exercising as well. I started doing the whole running again, which again, I know that someone might say, hey, what the hell are you doing outside, right? But
mm,
I'm still away from people. I'm going solo. I'm by myself. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not in closed places. I'm literally running in the open air. I mean, if it's gonna get me there, it's gonna get me there, man. Like
mm,
at that
yeah,
point,
yeah,
like I told my girlfriend about this stuff. I was like, if I'm sitting on my damn porch, if someone tells me it's aerosolized, right, it's in the air, and some Joe Blow above me just like coughs like outside, and I'm like reading on the damn porch beneath him, that's community spread. Like at that
yeah,
point, like you can't fucking like it wasn't. I'm sorry to say, I'm sorry to cuss, but you can't blame somebody for contracting it because of how
yeah,
easy it is to contract. Like how like the fight not only for COVID, but the fight against infectious disease is like a full-time war. You know what I mean? Like it
mm,
is just something that only now people are aware of, right? Like I see people in the stores and they're panicking about it, and I'm like, not downplaying the seriousness of it, but I'm like, welcome to
mhm,
infectious disease, chapter one. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Welcome to the panic, right?
The
Every
panic.
biologist, every person who studies biology, when they get into not only cellular theory, but then when they start getting into like how these viruses and bacteria and all this other stuff, like they're really vulnerable to some of these things, right? That
Yeah,
literally modify our code, right?
yeah,
The game in which we play by, like they change the rules, like so like these things are so fear inducing that there are some people who study that stuff and just like have an incessant anxiety. So for anyone who's listening to this and you're like, man, this stuff is making me panic, that kind of means you're sane. That kind of
yeah.
means it's normal. Just kind of try to control the anxiety as we're trying to do, right? Like rather than you and I welling up, we're communing about it, talking about it. I've had more Skype chats and Discord chats and all this video stuff in the last 3 weeks than I've had probably in the last 2 years. It's ridiculous.
S- Same, and that's because we both play games online constantly, and we're constantly communicating from a distance
Yeah,
because
it's
of
it's the norm.
technology.
Yeah, no, but see, before this, right, I would have called it a luxury. Like before this, I would say, look, it's a luxury for me able to get time from work and get time from responsibility to be able to play some games and have some fun. But now it's like that whole meme, right, where it's like my grandpa had to go to Normandy and I get to stay home and be an American hero. And though it's not that exact, right, it's a little
This
mind
the
numbing.
severity of it
Yeah, it's a little,
is
yeah, yeah. It's a little mind numbing to kind of to figure out the difference between what being responsible and while also not being lazy, right? I mean, like this weird little middle ground between staying home but being productive. Like for those of
right.
us working at home, right? I find it really weird to try and work from home. Like home is rest, home is off,
Mhm.
home is not
Yeah,
work, and
yeah,
now we're doing both. I'm doing both. I'm doing both.
yeah. And getting into the mentality can sometimes be difficult for people because if you're in the same environment, if you're in the environment that you consider home and relaxation, sometimes that can seep over into your work. And you, like we talked about earlier, it's something that you might have to create that mentality and create the environment for yourself to be able to do so. For example, I'm not working right now, right? But we were talking about exercise a little earlier
Yeah,
and how
for
it's
sure.
really important right now. Thankfully I have a treadmill, so I don't really have to go outside for that. But even
Lucky
then it's like,
bastard.
I know it was a really good purchase 3 years ago, and I'm so glad I bought it 3 years ago.
Seriously, like again, something that would have been a luxury is a luxury, but something that at that time specifically,
Yeah.
and now it's a necessity, right? It's such a
Yes.
sorry, you were saying sorry.
No, no, you're good. You make a very valid point. But for me, it's like, well, aside from, I have to make sure I'm wearing. I feel like I have to be wearing gym clothes that I usually would take when I go out. Wearing the proper shoes, having music, um, and just making that immediate environment to make me feel like I'm actually running. I'm at the gym or something.
You know what this feels to
And
me
that
is,
helps.
you know, it does. It does help because like I do that for my lectures. For my lectures, I dress up as if I'm going to lecture. Now, okay,
Yeah.
I loosen things up. I don't wear a tie, but you know what I mean. I have to do that to get my head in the right space for it, because otherwise, it doesn't feel right. The brain works on cues, and so when I put on that shirt, put on that stuff, and do my hair and all that, it
You're
gets
ready to
my
go.
yeah, it gets my brain right into the space it needs to be. But it's just a weird thing to kind of adapt to because I think of 2000. I think I told you this 2001: A Space Odyssey, right? I think of that freaking movie now because when that android cyborg, I don't know, but it might be cyborg, but that AI, not Hal, but the other one. It shows the individual kind of like going through the forms of life, right? Like going for a walk and like going through like keeping themselves entertained, like seeing like general things like happy birthday messages, and like you have like a routine, even though in the sense of like being in outer space, right? Time kind of doesn't mean anything. At least it is less of a serious thing. But you start to see the person, you know, dress up for working out or get ready for this, that, or whatever. And I think that that's what this is that we're having to kind of create our own little mini environments. Like, and it's a little
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you mentioned Space Odyssey. Obviously, in turn, I can mention like Interstellar.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
having
sure.
a room on the spaceship that simulates the ocean, or you know, the street at night. You know, with the lamp with the light out at the end of the street. That's how, you know, people in that movie felt like they were at home
Yeah,
when they were millions and millions of miles
miles
away.
away. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
it's
kind
kind of like
of
that.
it is kind of like that. And so I guess in the sense of you and I being like lovers of sci-fi, that's probably what allows us to understand this a little easier. Maybe because as we're looking at this, we're not pigeonholed to one view of things, you know. So I think, not saying everybody is. I think this really like threw a stick in spokes, right? You know what I mean? Like this just, you know, bus just stopped and everybody flew forward and their face hit the damn window. Like, so it's not so much of a thing of judgment, but I think that this definitely is something that we could more easily conceptualize, even though the reality is still hard enough to get through. But it's just for some people, this is definitely like for people who've never seen those movies, for people who've never, you know, focused on other ways of being, for people who never really thought of another way to handle stuff like this, or who've never really, you know, focused on things of like cellular theory, you know, like
Right.
infectious disease. This is definitely going to be an interesting thing. So with that, that's why we wanted to kind of do the adaptation. I'm good to move forward if you are.
Sure. What I did want to add, if that's okay, just really
Sure.
quickly.
No.
We've been obviously right now. This is what most people would consider social distancing, right?
Yeah.
To be fair, we live in cities far apart from each other, anyways.
Yeah, we're roughly
But
4.5 hours from each other.
exactly, something that I mentioned to you a couple days ago while I was reviewing something for you was, you know, I think it's really a good idea to also look at it as physical distancing instead of social
Yeah,
distancing.
yeah, yeah.
And
I think
so
you're
I'm
right.
really glad that recently the CDC really is adopting that terminology. There was a tweet today, early this morning, which you can I could probably link at some point, maybe in the description and wherever this goes. You know, they say if someone has a birthday during COVID-19, does someone have a birthday during COVID-19 distancing? Show them you care by celebrating virtually. Record a video message, make signs,
Yeah.
send a picture, maintain physical distance while staying socially connected. And I'm so glad that they're saying this because I feel that some people might take social distancing as I can't talk to anyone
Yeah.
while
No, I think you're
this is
right.
going on.
Yeah, no, you're right. I really think that it's not an issue in the sense that someone, you know, set it out to be that way, right? But I think that in the rush of trying to get all this good information out, you know, they put social distancing, right? Because they thought about it, stay away from people. What they really meant was physical distancing. Because I can
Yeah.
guarantee that there's some people that when you say social distancing, they think, oh, I'll never get to speak to my friend, you know, again for a while. And it's like, no, 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 no. Like, speak to your friend, you know,
Yeah.
hang out in the sense of virtual hangouts, but it's just physical distance, you know, being able to communicate while having basically enough distance for someone's spit to not land on you. And you might not understand this, right? You might think, who's spitting on people? But the reality is that we like give out these microscopic, droplets of saliva in how we talk, and so worst comes to worst, I'm gonna get it on my screen, like, but you know what I mean. If we're talking,
You won't get it on me.
close, exactly. If we're talking that close to one another, then it would be a real big concern. But no, I'm with you. Physical distancing, I have been really close with just about everybody. And that's that you and I have a friend in the oil fields. You and I both have friends across the country. And you perhaps somewhere around the world, a few folks. And so with that, we've maintained contact pre-COVID-19. And with this, all it's done is raise the quality of the time we spend, not only with those people, but also we use that experience to connect to others. I love seeing people's faces. I had a meeting today, and when we talk about Zoom and we talk about like Skype and we talk about this, we always imagine, oh, this call's gonna suck, right? It's gonna be terrible, like it's gonna be so stupid. And then it's we're social creatures, and this is what no matter what we say, we're social creatures. When you turn on that damn app and you see people and they're talking to you in what feels like real time, the faces just lighten up. You know what I mean? Yeah. Everyone's just like, hey, like everything just feels normal for a bit. And I feel like that's what a lot of us need. I definitely, and I felt a certain way about people kind of getting together. I know we have friends that were continuing to get together. I don't think they're getting together anymore.
I hope not.
I hope not, right? But in voicing my concern, I met some resistance, and I understand that resistance because it's basically like growth edges, man. Like a lot of people are finding out they need to change, and it's not easy to change. And it's easier for us to do it as humans, but nobody likes change, man. And this is definitely a hard one on some, most for sure, but for some, they are going to take this a little harder.
I think something that I definitely heard someone mention, and if it comes back to me, I'll tell you who said this to me, but it's like we have not, as a whole, I guess as a country in this point, we really haven't had to sacrifice a lot.
Not at this level.
In terms of our daily lives,
not
because of the current situation. And you're right. Some people are just not gonna like it and understand it, and they're not gonna cope with it well. But I hope that those people can find some kind of comfort in knowing that they can reach out to somebody that they know in this kind of time, and maybe you can talk it through with them. That's a method that I'd probably use if I felt that way.
No, for sure. I mean, it's weird to think about. But one of my favorite audiobooks and books, but audiobooks because I love the acting they put on there. But one of my favorite audiobooks is World War Z by Max Brooks. And there's a clip in there where one of the commanders, they're talking post-World War Z, right? Post the zombie war. And one of the guys is touting about how, like, everybody says that, oh, we were under total war, we were under total this, and we had to fight with everything of our being. And the guy kind of pushes back and says, no, like, you weren't in total war. Total war means everybody, from the oldest to the youth, spends a good amount of their time focused on the effort. Yeah. Like, that's World War II. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, the Iraqi war, no, I didn't really see much of a change in my daily life. I wasn't alive for Desert Storm, or I was, but I wasn't, cognizant of it, right?
Right, same.
And so I really think that this is kind of a weird connecting factor because it's an indiscriminate, non-human threat. And in that way, as odd as it is, the Queen, right? The Queen said that, right? That this is a uniting factor, right? That not only is, essentially what is the EU, but not the EU currently, right? But we're not going to talk about that.
Right.
No. But not right now. But that basically we're all in this together, and that this, by virtue of what kind of threat it is, we're unified in a weird way. in a really weird way.
It's a common threat.
Yeah, and it's a superordinate goal. It's something that it's above our current focus, right? Which hopefully it should be. I know that there are people who are definitely turning this into the same old nationalistic argument and same old, fine, maybe not racially biased, but culturally biased and preferenced, whatever. Point is that there's definitely some bias behind there. I don't see this as a threat with a nationality. I see this as a something that I personally have been reading about since high school: the threat of infectious disease, and the fact that Bill Gates talked about this 4 years ago. You know what I mean?
Is chilling.
Is chilling. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why people are giving him a spotlight. It's because called it, like guy called it. Not COVID specifically, but there are people who wrote specifically about the coronavirus family and basically said, it's probably going to come from this place around the world by natural factors, and it's probably going to be one of these families, just like it was SARS, because this isn't the first time we've fought one from this family. This is we got a contender. We got another one coming out of this batch. So, but that's enough of us talking about doom and gloom. We've been trying to make light of it. Hopefully, and again, anyone making it this far, hopefully it hasn't been doom and gloom to you. But now we're going to switch to something that is a bit more closer to us both. We're going to switch to games.
Yes.
Which I find interesting, right? So, do you want to talk about this one?
Sure. So I think we want to do a couple different things with this segment, but one thing we want to do is take a look at a game that's maybe in progress, that's going to come out soon, and that's kind of on a development track, but, kind of like, is affected by what's going on. So for me, recently, The Last of Us 2.
Yeah, and I'll admit, I've yet to play the first, but I've watched it played, and
Gotcha.
So I watched it be played, and I appreciate that game. That game is definitely kind of its own thing. Yeah,
It's I have all kinds of feelings about that game. It's something that has impacted me in a way that I rarely get out of that medium. Not to say that that is a bad thing, but there's some things that definitely just turn a switch in me and just make me perceive and view things differently, and that's something that's very powerful. But for The Last of Us in particular, that day.
but why'd you
that
like
delay
it though?
came-
Because so I guess this kind of
No, that's fine.
It helps in my way, because it obviously changed how games are done, right? Because the latest
Right.
God of War is totally something built off the Last of Us mechanic,
Yes.
right? Now, not the tone, not the plot.
Very different tone.
Very different tone, very different tone, very different plot, right? But the mechanic, from an animating standpoint, is pretty much Last of Us, in the sense of you have a follower, and that follower has a major point on the character arc and all this, and it's an involved piece.
And they're
right?
and they're useful on moment-to-moment mechanics.
Yeah,
when you're
exactly,
traversing,
yeah.
which is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing, which is why I think so. Last of Us, did the Last of Us invent that, or
No.
but
No,
it perfected it? What it feels like, or it was one that kind of it either lucked out, or the right string of things came up that knocked it right, that brought it out of the park.
It definitely improved it. You know what? I'm not going to say I know what the very first game to do that was, but one before that was BioShock Infinite, which, to be fair, they're not. They're months apart, like in release. They came out in the same year, but they both had very different approaches on how the AI, how your companion AI acted around you. And what was great about BioShock Infinite was you play Booker, and the companion, your AI with you, her name is Elizabeth. And aside from exposition going on between both characters, she was in combat with you, and she was opening portals to help you move around. She was tossing ammo at you and stuff like that, and that stuff worked so well at least for me. I know people maybe have a different opinion on it. It's also something that it's in progress. As technology gets better, it's just going to improve to a point where I think we'll probably not see that many faults in it. But I think the difference in The Last of Us in particular is that they made the character of Ellie, who is, the secondary, who is the companion in this case, they made her so believable. They do such an excellent job, especially in motion capture, facial capture.
I was going to say is that even I, and having not played the game, I feel like I know a couple scenes from that game.
Yeah. And think about it. That game came out in 2013, so it's been a while. but I play it to let you know how impactful it is to me. I play it at least once a year to remind myself of why it's important to me.
No, I totally get you because
But
I was as you're talking about this, I'm thinking of Nier, and I'm thinking of like a game that speaks to me in that way.
mhm.
And it's really cool how like basically you return to these games just to get the same feeling off it. Remind yourself as to like why it was pivotal.
Right. And I think I'm not sure. This is not a spoiler, really. I won't
I
mention
mean, bro, it's
specifics.
years.
Yeah, but you haven't played it yet,
No, I haven't. I haven't. No, I haven't.
and I
I thought you were
respect.
talking
I
about for
respect
like
that.
anyone listening. I thought you were talking about anyone listening. I was like, bro, if anyone's listening to this and they haven't
You
like,
had time.
yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, don't do it for me because I've had time. But no, it is onto something we were going to talk about before, but it's definitely on my backlog.
Good.
It's definitely something that I want to get to. My backlog of games. For those who don't know what that is, a backlog. Every gamer has probably too many games, and they bought a couple on sale or whatever, and they just need to get to it. And it's on my backlog.
Yeah, we save it for a rainy day that comes, but then we ended up just playing other games with our friends, and that
Yeah.
takes up most of our time,
Yep.
which is not a bad thing.
Which is
But that
another
just
thing,
also
right?
that goes back to the social tangent, right? But going back a little bit, you asked me the reason why it was so impactful or important to me. You know, it ultimately comes down to the characters and how real. I told you about Ellie, how she feels so real.
Yeah.
Her dialogue is so believable, and it feels like you are talking to another person. She's reacting the way you would expect someone to react in those situations. But I think the dynamic between her and the main character, or well, the protagonist, the person you play, Joel,
Sure.
they're both
Thank
equally.
you. I was wondering what his name was. I was like,
Yeah.
I feel like as I couldn't remember his name. He reminds me. He looks like the guy, like the number 2 from Star Trek.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
That's basically comes to mind.
For the longest time, I know a lot of people said this already, but like Josh Brolin,
Oh
Brolin
yeah, I could
can
see
kind of
that.
nail it.
I could say that, especially after Thanos, bro.
Yeah,
Especially after Thanos. Jeez.
But yeah, what it comes down to is the characters. And for me, there's a specific moment. There's two specific moments in the game, but one closer to the end, which I won't really detail too much. But let's just say a bunch of something peaks, like the action kind of peaks, and then you're coming down from it. And there's a little more exposition. There's less action. There's more reflection between the characters when you're traversing a certain level. And you get to a point where you're on top of this building and you're kind of just looking out. And the relationship that has evolved between Ellie and Joel through the whole game, which at the beginning was maybe slightly a slight of animosity because they didn't know each other, and then they just grew to depend on each other for survival's sake, which is not that far off from what we're experiencing today.
Yeah, for sure. I think I remember the intro to that game, for sure. And yeah, no, they don't start on the best of footing. Which, by the way, if I remember correctly, yeah, that game has a brutal start.
It does.
Yeah.
It
I did
doesn't
play the beginning of that.
pull any punches.
Yeah. It's one
It
of those
hits you
like,
straight in the gut.
yeah, it's like the game start, you get a sense of normalcy, and then like apocalypse hits. Which
Quite literally.
Yeah. No, I get you because there are certain like that game did it from what I could tell like in a good way that it Uncharted, Last of Us. There are a few games that really do start to feel like movies. That really do start to feel like they're cinematic in a sense. That they bring something else to it, other than just the mechanical side of it. They add a plot to it, and it just is something that slow simmers, and it eventually becomes something intense at the end. Because I remember like pivotal scenes, like where they would fight, right, or at the beginning when they're both trying to normalize it. For some odd reason, I'm remembering scenes from a truck.
Yes.
And so there's like a lot of stuff, and again, not that like I've maybe played it. I've watched it play through once, and I'm still pulling like things from it because it was like watching a good movie.
It stuck to you. You remembered it.
It did, because especially at that time, there wasn't another game that hit that same point.
I think at the time there weren't that many that took those themes very seriously, and at the time, I'm not going to blame actors or anything, but nobody was maybe given the direction to perform
Oh, sure.
in motion capture that way, because motion capture is very different from acting. Sometimes you're talking to a creature or something, or you have like props around you that don't exist, so you are doing double the work.
I mean, just
You
look at
have to imagine it.
Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and
Yeah.
not only that, but I mean, it's like a little green ball, right? A little green ball in the air, and they're like, "Imagine this is a monster." Like, it's what? How am I going to imagine that this little green dot is like? So that's why when people say like, "Oh, actors are a little weird," or they can have a really strong imagination. Well, no shit. Like you'd have to, in order to be able to make this into, to bring it to life. You got to kind of be able to get in your own head and be able to imagine that this little ball is a freaking monster.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
that game is something I need to play.
Yeah.
So the second one,
get-
right, is what's been.
I'm sorry?
What more do you want to say on that?
Oh yeah, what I was gonna say, because we were talking about why I felt so strongly about it. Ultimately, it was just a couple different scenes where I saw humanity happening, and it just felt natural. And there's one scene in particular, like I said, closer to the end, a little more reflection before the end it actually happens, and it's really peaceful. And there's a moment where they're on the rooftop and they're just looking out into basically nature taking its course and taking back the city that has long been vacant. And this beautiful music comes in from the composer's name, Gustavo Santaolalla, which is fantastic music. And they're just sharing a moment of peace and quiet with nature. And that might seem just like anything else if you just saw that without any kind of context. But the first time I played it, it made me cry. And then the second time I played it, it made me cry. And it's literally done that every single time.
No, I get you, because there are games out there that have that really heavy, like that really heavy hit, that they just bring something else to the game, that it's really hard to make sense. That's why it's kind of weird to think about. But before, there was this whole conversation about how gaming isn't an art form, right?
Yeah.
And now it's just hard to even. That's just hard to argue. The idea that it's not an art form, because anything that can bring you to that level of emotion is art. Not only that, but let's be real here. What do we find as art is pretty freaking vague. So you can't tell me that that gaming isn't art. But especially when we're talking about things like The Last of Us, or for me, Nier Automata, right? Or for I mean, we all have these games. I mean, there's like Horizon Zero Dawn is a big one for some. Fallout 4 is big for you and I. Like,
yes.
there are games out there that just like you're automatically enamored with, just of how massive they are in world building. And I can definitely see why that one is for you. Again, the reason why I didn't play that one is because I'm not into horror games usually, in the sense of like how the monsters are. But case in point, by my playing Doom recently, I'm kind of shifting on that. So I wouldn't mind going into it. I'm not usually one for sneaking games. Not usually one for traversing around. I play Assassin's Creed, but Assassin's Creed is not a sneak game. Assassin's Creed is more for like, it's just parkour.
Yeah, up and down,
all
kinds of buildings.
Yeah, but you literally go 6 feet off the ground, and the guy right beneath you is like, "Where'd he go?" Like, whereas in that game, like you actually stand up and they see you, right? Whereas me, I'm like in front of them, like, and they're like, "Where's he at?"
The urgency of the AI is very different.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying, is that like it's not that I didn't play the game because I didn't like it, but at that time I was definitely a terrible gamer, and I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna, because at that point I was playing PC.
Right.
I was playing PC. But I mean, it's crazy with that, all that said, I can imagine why because with your perspective, you're like, has it been officially pushed back?
Yes. So they finally came out recently, and they said that it was delayed indefinitely. And this is only weeks from launch, man. Like I was so close. It was going to be May 29th.
Which that's what,
first
6 weeks?
Yeah, it's
5 weeks.
It's not even that long from now. And somehow, despite the time that we've been inside, weeks have been going by a lot faster for me.
Well, I mean, we're looking at the same damn thing over and over.
Yeah, that's true. The game was originally on track for, and I'm just taking from some information from Jason Schreier, who is the Kotaku news editor. He tweeted out that yeah, it was on track for May. It wasn't gold yet, but the primary reason for the delay was the challenge of printing and shipping and selling physical games right now. And you might think, and now this is a whole nother tangent that I don't want to get into right now, but for a game of that scale, a first-party game, which basically means that Sony, the people who make the PlayStation, are publishing it exclusively for their console. In case you don't know, that's a big deal. There's a lot of resources to go into it, and the game already has high expectations. So you obviously want to be able to reach as many people as possible. So instead of them just saying, "Well, we'll just release it digitally," it's not done yet. It made more sense for them, I guess, to pull the plug on it for the meantime. So everyone who can get a hold of it physically or digitally can experience it at the same time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, not only that, but like contaminant factors of like doing the whole factory, and especially with people being asymptomatic, that really scares the crap out of folk. And I understand why, but it definitely gives people like every excuse imaginable to kind of slow down, a lot of these productions.
Yeah.
You're so close, yeah. But I mean, damn it, dude. It's literally, so I should clear this out too. I am awaiting a pre-order too. I'm getting a pre-order Thursday, Friday, and I'm lucky just by the span of like 3 weeks. That I'm gonna get to play a game, that by virtue of like 3 to 4 weeks, you won't be able to get to play it. Like, and that's that both of our games are done. Mine's just printed, and yours isn't.
Yeah. Well, actually, the game wasn't quite done.
Oh, okay. So
it wasn't
still
gold.
going
It wasn't
through.
gold yet. It wasn't gold yet, but it would have been in like a week or two, I'm assuming.
Which I might still get done, right? But
yeah, more on the tweet. Going remote has not stopped those still working on the game, such as QA, from crunching though. So people are still working on it, but obviously, I don't know all the details because I don't work in game dev. But despite them having so many resources, like the current situation, just it gets in the way of that, and
no, for
sometimes
sure.
things need to pause.
Back to my statement
So
before is like not that I don't think this is total war, right? But this gets to that, right? To where like everything that
stops.
if not stops, slows down, and like the beat skips, right? Like the vinyl has skipped. Someone hit the turntable, and
Yeah.
the vinyl has skipped. You know what I mean? Like the song's gonna continue, but is it gonna continue to skip, or is it gonna like smoothen out? Have they given any sort of a guesstimate as to like when that might be released?
No. So the message from Naughty Dog in particular is that yeah, it's basically going to be delayed indefinitely. So they haven't given us any kind of timeline to suggest that maybe it'll be out in the fall for the PlayStation 5 release, which is still also, they say, not up in the air. But I'm going to say that, well, if one of your major titles is delayed for that long, I'm going to assume it's going to be even much harder to manufacture a console in our current state.
Yeah, I think the only reason why they would say that that's not the case is because like the PlayStation 5, any type of tier 1 technology, which the PS5 by virtue of basically creating and engineering a new video card is going to be with AMD, but all of those things are made in a clean room. Like, so
Yeah.
I could, at the very least, for creating a console, I can see why they might be like, well, we have to have a clean room anyways, and everyone's wearing PPE. And because have you seen those videos of when the machines are creating like Xbox Ones and like PlayStation 4s? Like, people are in a clean
Yeah.
room, dude. Like,
Yeah, I have.
and so I think that might be the only reason why they might not stop the PS5, because by virtue of what they're working on, they already have some pretty high standards for PPE.
Right.
But the only funny trick was that it wasn't for the people, it was for the machines. It was to make sure that when Sony sold the PlayStation, that you couldn't say, "Hey, why isn't it working?" Oh, it's because some dust or some this or some that got in this little area, and so they didn't do it for the people. It's just in hindsight, I think it's 2020 now. They're like, "Oh, we're suddenly prepared.
Yeah.
We can suddenly do this." But
Yeah.
I'm with you though. I don't think it's a bad bet to bet that the PS5 would be delayed. I don't think it's a
And
bad
if,
bet.
if if anything, I would say, sorry, that if they didn't delay it, then it would be in very limited quantities, if
Yeah.
anything.
Pre-order, bro.
So yes, if you really want this and you have the ability to do so at that time, then you're gonna have to get that pre-order as soon as possible if
Yep.
you want it day one
Yep.
or close to day one.
As close to day one as possible, right?
Yeah.
And it's gonna be a tough thing, but I mean, I'm surprised that they wouldn't do that because it seems like everyone's go-to statement right now is, "We will resume in the fall."
Yeah.
Right? Everybody's go-to statement is, "We'll do this again later. We're gonna pick this up in August. Or we're gonna pick this up in October, September." Like, I don't know that that's gonna be a thing or not. But I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see whether or not these things go through because like the models for New York show that they're apexing right now,
Yeah.
which is kind of positive news. I mean, because
It's a somber thing to hear, but it does show you that it's going to get better
at some point.
at some point.
Yeah. The question is does it hit better sooner than later, and is it seasonal and we can take a break, let a lot of the season not take a full break, but let a lot of the season do the work for Contaminant, we get better as the time comes, and then when the winter hits, everybody freaking like goes all out. Think about that, man. How crazy it would be to have seasonal quarantine. Like, that's just such an odd thought. Just like, oh, I got my winter jacket, I got my sweater, I got my PPE full body gear.
Right.
And
then
it's not
the
a
camera
costume.
The camera pans to the door, and there's 7 locks that are slowly locking one by one and down.
I know that has the air pressure release to and so yeah, if it's seasonal, right? That seasonal is good news, because that means that it maybe us down here aren't going to have as heavy a reaction to it. It's harder to spread, and that we'll be in a bit of a safer spot. More so you than I, but still you and I more so than New York. And then if it's not seasonal, then that means that this goes on for a while.
Yeah.
As long as it needs to, I guess. But it's hopeful to think August, right? It's funny. Have you heard the media? Like, media's like, oh, April, May. I'm like, I don't know, guys.
This is something for later, but one of the shows that I was going to go to got postponed, and then it basically came up again in August, somewhere around my birthday. But I was like, man, I would love for that to be a reality, but listen, probably not going to happen.
Yeah, TBA, the biggest TBA I've ever seen. Like, you know what I mean?
Seriously, across so many different mediums, right?
Yeah, it's this hits everybody. So I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. So
no, that's okay.
So what you're talking about one of your favorite games, right? Like, so do you have any other thoughts you want to say on that?
Sure. I think that's something that maybe some people just don't understand. I've definitely seen some like pushback and backlash about games being delayed at this current moment, or maybe like, hey, release it early because we're all at home. It's it's really not that easy. It really isn't. Like, for example, there's a couple different Japanese games coming out. There's like Final Fantasy. There was Persona that came out recently. Now
You're
those
talking
games
about
are
like what they
out.
did for Doom, right? Like what they did for Doom Eternal, because they made Doom Eternal digital access, right?
So they actually released it digitally a day early.
Okay.
They did.
Okay.
But I think that was, I can't say why that happened, but I think it's because the physical versions, certain retailers decided to release it early because I think they were concerned about being closed down for the duration and not being able to make those sales.
Which that's a segue of going to what I'm experiencing too here in a little bit. But yeah, finish your thought on all that.
Yes. So so they did that, I guess, to say, hey, like, well, if you have a digital copy, you can play it too. And I was pretty happy about that because they offered it to me. But if they don't, that's fine, because game devs, they're people, just like us.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're experiencing things just like we are. I think people need to understand that while games are made with computers as the tool, person behind it is what really makes it. And
it's true.
and I guess maybe people in game dev obviously won't listen to this, but a message to them, that the people who love your creations that you share with the world, well, we care about you too, and something that I think is a set of words that I love to think about right now, especially from The Last of Us, is survive and endure.
Yeah.
or endure and survive.
However,
And I think that I hope the same for those people in game dev who are maybe experiencing, they're being affected by what's happening, and that was so close to coming out. Nobody can experience it, and that must be devastating. To create something and having it pushed back because of something that's completely out of their control, anyone's control.
for sure, and not only
So
that, but it's affecting them on all fronts, right? I mean, not only that, but I mean, are they getting paid during this time, right? And this is not something that's specific to game devs, right? This is something specific to a lot of people. Like, are they getting paid if they're furloughed? Can they come back? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff going on in the sense of like work. So, I mean, if they're home working, I'm proud of them for doing so, right? Because I agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I care about the people who make the games. I know as gamers we can be pretty intense with our expectations.
We can.
For sure. I think you and I specifically have our we have our moments for sure. But no, there's a real human element behind this that most people, in lieu of playing the game, you know, don't think about, I guess.
Yeah, because you're so invested in what's happening on the screen, and that's a compliment to their work.
No,
That
sure.
means they did a good job.
Yeah.
So the last thing I would say is, hey, folks, be patient. We're all kind of in the same boat here. We will eventually get to experience this, and you know what? It's going to be so much sweeter when we do.
Yeah, I second that and I agree with it. It's kind of hell, getting together for drinks is going to feel, amazing. I remember, it's like the defining moment, right? But I remember reading about how, like, the hugs on V-Day and stuff like that, right? The happiness to say, hey, this is over, I do wonder how it's going to be when we experience, our V-Day,
Yeah.
over all this. And then be able to kind of actually say, hey, I'll see you at the bar. And on that day, you have no excuse, good sir. You have
Oh,
none.
don't worry. I'll say that I definitely cherish my most recent social interactions in person with people more now, because I know that it's been a couple weeks,
Yeah.
and it might turn to more time for all we know, or maybe not.
But we have
for
to
the
be ready for
meantime-
whatever. We have to be ready for
Yes, we have
whatever's
to be
coming.
exactly. I'm not going to say that it's going to be forever, but we have to be ready in case this has to continue for a little bit.
No, I'm with you. I guess on that I'll move to mine. If you're cool with that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right, cool. So on mine, I'm not going to go too much into it. It's basically the alternative of what you're experiencing, which I feel so bad talking about now, because now I'm talking about it, I actually think I'm like, well, basically my whole section is I get to play with this. and after we just got done talking about how you don't get to play with yours.
Yeah.
But my game that I'm talking about, and so the idea, generally speaking, is that we're both going to have like one or two games that we want to talk about, either in dev content, right, or just in the sense that it's coming out, or thoughts about it, whatever, right? I don't have a second one, but I do have, or at least not one that I've like looked into devs about, but Final Fantasy VII is the one that I want to talk about today on my side. Trying to put how exactly that game affected me into words is a little bit weird, because unlike you, I think you experienced Last of Us like into your teen years, right? Early teens, late teens, right?
I was 22.
No, that's
when I experienced
right.
that.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So no. So in mine, when I experienced Final Fantasy VII, 1997, dude. Literally 6 freaking years old when it comes out. I probably don't play it till 2 years after it's released, and I maybe play it 99.
Okay.
99, 2000. And that game, kind of how you were talking about how like Last of Us hit you. This game hit me because it was one of those, I must say, especially talking about 1997, we're talking about like two polygons talking to each other. Right?
Yeah.
The graphics on this game isn't great. But the storytelling is pretty interesting. It's a story about, corrupt organizations and people mining the you can make an analogy to oil, but the life source from the earth, right? And it's having an effect on people, and they're doing experiments, and they have like a soldier program, and they're creating like, it's like the darker bits of like Captain America and like other odd stuff in the sense of like super soldiers and things of that nature.
Okay.
But what really kind of got me into this is that it's also a mystical world of like you can make summons, you can bring creatures into this world, you can do so. It was a really fantastical world, which is what got me into it. But I can remember the damn moment where I was like, this is like one of the mediums for me, like this exact scene, and I get kind of chills even thinking about it. But the way that game goes through is that it makes you, it puts you in a love triangle. Oh, I'm getting a call. Oh, is that you or me?
That's probably you.
Oh, that sucks if it's me.
That's okay.
I just don't even know where it's coming from.
Ooh. Internal screaming.
Oh, I know where it's coming from, and it's going to be a no. Ignore. Get out of here. I know exactly what that was, and I'm very sorry to everybody listening. We're working out the kinks. But so it puts you kind of in a love triangle that really pivots you between these two types of individuals. And your main character is like this amnesic guy who doesn't even know who the hell he is, and he's constantly going through like a Memento type of like a who am I? What did I do? Did I murder? Am I a killer? Am I a hero? Like who the hell am I? And then once he's kind of going through that, in the midst of all that, there's a love triangle between, like Tifa and Aerith. And everybody knows Tifa, but you can tell who played the game by who knows Aerith.
Right.
Because she's the one who's not on the cover, like, or the original cover, who's not on like any of the material. Like she's very much like only in fan art has she really kind of come out. And only post the focus on her character, but it's kind of like spoilers and all this, right? If you're about to play FF7 new, I'm very sorry, but like you should have known.
You had a really long time.
You had a really long time, yeah. But so I'll give you like a second to skip this, if that's the case, right? But basically, when the story starts to turn on like disc 3, right? We're talking about disc 3 over here. She essentially gets killed, which is kind of hard to. So she gets killed in almost like in a murder for emotional reaction, and it's totally unexpected. And I remember playing the game and the cutscene hits, and you have to switch discs after this, I think. And like as soon as the cutscene hits, she's murdered. And you see the amnesiac who just barely found his place in the world kind of like bury the person who helped him find his place. So as soon as he like gets a footing, like it's just taken from him. And then at that point, the person who took it from him, everyone knows Sephiroth, right?
Right.
Mr. Longsword.
Big ass sword.
The big ass sword and thinning, but yet somehow perfect hair. And Advent Children, I swear, that freaking video.
Oh gosh,
I know. That's something to rewatch.
I forgot that existed.
Dude, Advent Children is like a whole other thing, which I should watch in preparing for the game. But in that moment, man, it like really hit me, and that's when I remember thinking about that death for like 2 days, 3 days. And then I realized, holy shit, this is a character. It's not real. And then I slowly started to realize, whoa, I love this game. What kind of game is this? Oh, it's a role-playing game. And that game eventually got me into Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy IX. I played 10. I didn't play 10-2, but 10-2 wasn't made for me, I don't think. And then I played 13. And then again, 13-2, 13-3 wasn't really meant for me. I played 14. I've owned 15. And I'm ready for this one. But this I am so ready for this game because they basically did what you're talking about that The Last of Us did so well. From what I played and playing the demo, they're turning this game into a movie. Like it feels so cinematic. Characters that never had voice actors now have voice acting. Polygons talking to each other now looks like a damn movie scene. It looks like Advent Children, and it is such a weird thing because in playing it, the music's there, the game's there. Of course, they've adapted it. They did what I think it did. Everyone complains about Final Fantasy 15 because the story wasn't like fully fledged out as some people wanted. It was kind of a boys' story.
Right, a road trip.
Yeah, a road trip, a whole road trip with like arranged marriage involved. It was a really weird cultural like game. It was just like odd, at least for like Western North American audiences, for sure.
Yeah.
But I loved the detail of the game. I loved the fighting mechanisms of the game. And though I liked the story, and a lot of people didn't, and I truly feel that Final Fantasy 15 died for this game. I feel like, if you look at any type of, store, FF15 is almost on sale perpetually. And it's because I think it's had that hard of a hit in the sense that, even though it took so much work to make it look amazing, I mean, it looks so damn good. I think it fell because of how people reacted to the story. And Final Fantasy 7 gets to get a second life off the back of the engine they built for Final Fantasy 15, which holds a place in my heart, but still.
Right. Post-launch, it definitely seemed like it was going to be in the shadow of the Final Fantasy VII remake, even though that was at that point years away, right? Because that was announced some time ago.
Yeah, no, that was. They've been working on it, for years. Yeah. Ever since remakes were a thing.
Right. Just to be clear, so you did like Final Fantasy 15?
I do like Final Fantasy 15.
Okay.
But I may disagree.
Okay, good, because I have something for you. I'll give it to you later.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Let me know. I appreciate that. But what I'm saying is that, I might disagree with somebody who says that Final Fantasy 15 was a failure, but I would understand why they said that. I would totally get why they said that. So with that, I am excited. And to kind of let you know how this is, this, but anyone listening, how this is a little bit different. Where Todd's game is getting stopped, right? My game might be getting expedited, right? And what I mean by that is that a lot of these stores that I will not name, who take pre-orders for these things, they might be under risk of shutting down appropriately for with what's occurring, arguably, or at the very least they're going to have to adapt in how they do business, and in refusing to adapt, they've kind of put themselves in the crossfire between a lot of people, trying to shut them down and things of that nature, because people are trying to get them to close because they seem to not realize what's going on. So while all this is going on, I've talked to my local representative, and I'm like, hey, what's going on, right? And he's basically like, we're going to close at some point. Who knows when, and I'm hoping to get you your game. Right. And so speaking of Doom, I think one of the reasons why they did that is because a bunch of retailers, like you were saying, were predicting that people weren't going to be able to get their product, which is a concern. Right. Because they've paid for this. You know what I mean? Even if it's a down payment, they've paid.
And it's anticipated heavily.
Exactly. It's pre-ordered. It's literally pre-ordered to guarantee it. Right. Like that's the whole point. But when it comes to this, it's kind of odd in how exactly this is affecting everyday business, and the fact that we have people in the crossfire who are trying to give the game quicker or give the game easier.
Right.
Because I get to get the game, you have it postponed, and there's a bunch of game in between. You and I, and as well me and before, right there, Doom, and a bunch of other games that are kind of thrown into this. What other popular pre-orders are out? I know that Cyberpunk was going to come out later on, but that's been delayed.
Cyberpunk, it was delayed from, was it going to come out in May or April? I wish I had that information on me. I'm sorry, but now it's coming out in September. And
again, the whole hopefully the fall, right?
Right. Yeah. That change happened pre-COVID, but it's interesting how we're seeing that. But there's a lot of people that are a little scared and thinking that this might get delayed too. And I'm not going to say my argument. I'm not an argument. It's like, well, think of it this way. If Last of Us 2 was so close to release, this close to being gold and localized and manufactured, what about a game that's this many months out?
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean,
so much development left in a couple months. I don't know. It could be delayed.
And I honestly think it will be. It's not the only games that are going to experience this, but then again, it's not the only art form. It's not the only medium. Everybody's experiencing this to some extent.
Concerts, movies are being delayed. That Fast and Furious movie is delayed until next.
which I
right?
wasn't exactly excited to see, but it is delayed, that freaking movie.
Oh, sure. I'm just saying, like in general, like
No,
it's a
in
huge
general,
movie.
like there's a bunch of
Yeah,
movies. There's a bunch of movies. I mean, what? Uh, Hanks, right? Hanks caught it while on a movie set.
in
There's
Australia.
Yeah, in
Yes.
Australia, right? So it is everywhere. It is everywhere.
Yeah.
But it
And
is.
since he has recovered since. If you didn't know, he's good.
Yes, I did hear about that. But I do want to say on top of that note, who's gotten worse is Boris.
Yes, the Prime Minister
Prime
of
Minister.
UK.
Yeah, and so we are seeing an interesting like switch in all this stuff. Some
Yeah.
people are faring well, and some people aren't. That picture that Tom Hanks posted, that he was like, "I'm a-okay." I was like, "Bro, don't post that picture. You look sick." Like, put that
Yeah.
away.
No, he did. You know.
But I understand there wants to kind of calm everything. But I'm happy to hear Hanks is okay.
He's an American treasure. Like
He is. Shit,
I
him,
would've-
Bill Gates, Spielberg, Hanks and Spielberg together is a national treasure
yeah, in itself.
in itself.
Combination.
Seriously. But yeah, so that's kind of like all I have to say about that. I'm ridiculously excited for FF7. I'm gonna talk about it for sure ad nauseum when we play games at some point. I'm sure.
Please do. Yeah.
And I'm so ecstatic for it and ready for that game. But I do want to kind of switch into something that I think we kind of agreed to call on the holster.
Yes, we did.
And so the thinking behind this is that I don't know if every gamer's like this, but at least the gamers that we game with are like this. And you know, we all seem to have a game that's on the holster. What I mean by that is a game that, you know, even if you're going to play something else, you got backlog, you have a list of games to play no matter what happens. If someone utters the word, do you want to play game X? It's almost so hard for us to stop and say, no, I'm going to play something else. And what's that game for us almost always, Todd?
Overwatch.
Yes, Overwatch. Now it changes. We have had seasons where we get tired of Overwatch for a bit and we shift and we go into another game, right? But for the better part of years now,
4 years,
4 years,
give or take.
maybe 3 for me, because a good friend of ours bought the game for me. That's how addictive this game was. That a friend of ours bought the game.
Wait,
for
Gabe
me.
got it for you?
No, Davila did.
Oh, that's okay. Right.
Yeah, Davila got this game for me. He was like, I want to play this game, and here it is. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, okay, what is this? And
then he brought you into this whole world.
I know. But the thing is that like Davila is always like he's a man of temptation, because I gave 2 years of my life to World of Warcraft, and this guy is one of those people who spent time in there with me, as well as a few select people. So this guy who knows addiction, well. In the sense of gaming addiction, not substance use, right? But
Right.
has given me a game that I am just endlessly addicted to. And every time I think that I'm not going to come back to it, I find another character that I'm like, hey, let me better this character. Oh, let me do that. And then now, as a tanker or a healer, you could make me switch to almost all characters, and I'll make my way.
Yeah. I mean, it's a game, you know, where there's so much variety because there's so many different characters with so many different abilities and so many different classes, you know, tanks, healers, and people that just shoot, people that attack.
All right, so why do we like this game, though? I feel like, so for the people who come here and know us, we don't have to explain it, right? But to Joe Schmo, listen to this. What game is that? What are these players and all this? Why is it that we seem habitually addicted to this freaking game?
I think it has less to do with the game itself. I think it has more to do with the fact that not only are we are socializing together, you know, we're interacting, we're talking about our day. It's almost like going to the bar at the end of the night or something,
Sure.
you know, for maybe some people.
No, for real.
Or just going to a coffee shop or whatever, what you usually do with your friends on the Friday when you get off of your shift or something. But for us, it's nightly because we don't have to go anywhere for it. It's in the comfort of our own homes, but it inspires a sense of teamwork and camaraderie that perhaps maybe some people don't necessarily experience in their like maybe in their work life or something, you know, a sense of teamwork and accomplishment, you know.
So
and for me, those moments are the most memorable, you know.
they are.
their stories of their own, their fights, their battles that are fought,
That will
you know,
never be
and
seen or experienced by like anyone else than those who were in that match,
except in that moment.
in that moment. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because don't you love it when you're like, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die, and one of us is like, no, you're not, no, you're not, and like
Yeah.
one of us comes in and saves the day. Like, so
Yeah.
anyone listening who's never played this game, if you've known me for 5 minutes, you've probably either heard me talk about it and or you've seen a stream of me playing it. It's one of the common streams I use, or games I play in stream. But this game is addictive, in my opinion, too, is because of the teamwork it asks for. It asks for 6v6, and if you get if you're in there with a stranger, it's whatever. You don't really feel that huge of a connection to it because you're in there with some stranger, right? But when you're in there with five of your either your best friends, or we have all varying sizes of connection, right? All of us don't talk to each other 24/7. Some of us are better friends than others. That says nothing about quality, just says, variance, right? Just difference.
Time.
Time. That's really what it comes
Schedule.
down to. I've known you for like 11 years.
Yeah.
Longer, probably. And so, with that, I in playing over and over, I think we've gotten to the point recently, right, that we're on an uptick, right? All of us are playing pretty well. I mean,
Yes.
and to the point that when we get into a match, I think right now it's like 3 out of 5 we win.
Yes.
Right, where we've had it to where it's 1 out of 5.
Yeah.
we win.
There are rough nights like any other game or any other I would even call it a sport. That's a different thing, but
Oh, esports, that's a topic we could hit at some other point for sure.
absolutely. But it's like going outside for a pickup game. You win it, and it like there's tension and there's build up, and it feels good. It feels good. But when you lose it, it's like, whoa. Sometimes it hits you really hard because you put a lot of work and effort into that match.
We should say that though these matches are like it's ideally supposed to be 10 minutes total.
Oh,
Like let's say overtime doesn't happen. Let's say overtime doesn't happen.
8 minutes.
8 minutes, right? So we're talking 8 minutes in a match, right? Give or take, a few seconds, right? 30, 40 seconds. And let's say that's just the clock time. There's something known as overtime, which is all the, or at least one of each team is on the point that's being contested for. And you're basically having to fight in a first-person shooter, but it's also with different abilities, different tricks, different AOEs, environmental attacks, different weapons, different hit damages, hitboxes. I mean, every character is different to the point that you can sometimes have overtimes that go for like 7 minutes plus. I've been in overtime for 7 minutes plus. That was I know for a fact. In Mayhem, I've been in overtime for 7 minutes plus.
Well, in Mayhem, it's different because your health is increased exponentially,
and your cooldowns are halved.
Yeah, and you take a lot more damage than you usually do. Those moments are really interesting because it really puts you under pressure, and it puts you in a situation where you have to you want to perform to your best ability, because the moment that you don't, and the moment that you expire, or the moment that your teammate expires next to you because maybe you weren't paying attention to what was going on around, it's over. You're losing the match.
Yeah,
and it'll drop in a second. The longer you stay in Overwatch, the quicker it'll finish the moment you step off the plate.
Yep. It's such a trip to see how communal it is, in the sense that, I think we're in a match last night, and one of our friends was telling me like, hey, maybe we can use another tank. And I was like, I'm with you. And I was like, but I don't think the tanks are the problem. You know what I mean? And he's like, no, you're right. The tanks aren't the problem. He's like, but we need to try and get around this. It's like, so try and, put some chaos into it. And I've had it to where I've thought I've thrown the game. I'm like, let me just try and play something else. And for some odd reason, it works. And it ticks me off even more. But no, there's a give and take. You can't just play, well, you can, but ideally, I don't think you should just play the character you like. Now, you have the benefit of having a favorite character that almost fits every team. Almost.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely, there are even moments where I would say that it's beneficial to not have that character on the field.
Yeah, because she is a vulnerability as much as she is a trump card, as much as she is like a plus, because she has like the weakest armor defense. Like, and so, you know, if someone just ults in her direction, like she's done, right?
Yeah,
Whereas, so
there's a character like McCree, for example, who is DPS, which is, that means their purpose is to shoot
yeah,
things.
damage per second.
Right, his ultimate, which is this ability that you build up over time by just playing the game.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a, don't call it a cheat, but just call it your Superman moment or something. And he's a cowboy. He has a gun. He's got a hat. He's got the boots. His thing is called dead aim, right? And so with that, he can just automatically look at certain characters on the other team, pull the trigger, and they're dead,
Yeah.
right? And for the character that you're talking about, John Mercy, a healer, she has 200 health. You mentioned that all these different characters, different sizes, different weapon types, they all have different amounts of health. So that shot may not be devastating to a tank that you play because you have 600 health.
And
might
like
tick you a little
invulnerability, things like going gold as Orisa or healing
Right. Or putting a shield in front of you.
Yeah, or putting a shield, yeah.
With my character Mercy, she can fly and stuff, and I'm like zipping around everywhere.
Seriously.
And that'll instantly kill me. And the thing is, it's gotten to a point now where like I accept the death. I know it's gonna happen. I know I can't avoid it. It's just not something I can avoid.
It's coming. It's coming. No,
it's
with
coming.
you. Yeah. There's certain things like the same thing as when I hear Diva's ult. You know what I mean? Diva's a mechanized, a teenager in a mechanized unit who can shoot a bomb across the map, and whoever can see the bomb dies.
Basically.
And so, like, this game is multifaceted, and hopefully in our talking about it, we can kind of maintain our own neuroses on it, and also maybe interest you, because we want to talk about the matches that we've been having recently, because I think that does say something about what we're currently going through, how cool it is, because sometimes we have some really tough conversations over some matches, or we have some really easy conversations and fun-loving ones over matches, but either way, that ends up feeding into the game. And I've had it to where I know we've had attitude with each other sometimes, and then we we literally just give it all to the enemy team, and like we win. And it's just something so affirming and so cool. And it's not to say that we just love the heated fight, but because we go into mystery mode, which means it could be any character. You know, we try our best to keep it interesting. But it's really curious how this game has stayed with us for a long damn time. I think every year I see some comment on online where someone's like, "This is the last year for Overwatch. It's never gonna go forward. It's been a long time coming. Good luck, guys. Enjoy it while you can." And I've been literally hearing that for years. And it has not died.
They said that about World of Warcraft, and they said that about League of Legends. And where are they now? At the top of the Twitch page.
At the freaking
constantly
Twitch
relevant.
Page. Yep, constantly. World of Warcraft is what got me what cemented me as a gamer, I should say. And for sure, that freaking stuff is addicting for a reason. It's a mechanism that you can't get all the time. You can't really find elsewhere. Because we've had that, right? We switched to other games, right? We play Rainbow Six, which is a more personal favorite of yours, but I play it with you like readily. A lot of us do.
It's a very different tone and very different urgency that you feel in that
But it's
game.
stimulating, a lot like Overwatch is, though, but in a different way. Almost like
that's like in bursts.
Yeah, but that one is. Guys, all right, so Overwatch overtime is one thing, okay? So Overwatch overtime is one thing, and I can sweat those minutes because those are a certain type of minutes. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not scared for my life in those minutes. What happens in Rainbow Six is it tricks your brain into thinking you're actually in a room that's basically paper mache.
Yes.
And that a bullet from anywhere around you, 360, up, down, 2 floors in a house, you know what I mean? And now that they got people who can run through walls and be invisible, like basically you're in a house where every step, you can hear people's every step and they can hear yours. They can practically hear your breathing. And at any given moment, they can kill you. Which now that doesn't sound too scary, except for the fact that you're on a team of like 6, right? 6 again. Or is it 5?
No, it's 5.
It's 5, yeah. So it's a team of 5. Well, guess what? If you're the last man standing, everybody's watching your camera, and I've done it like maybe once or twice, but I've seen you and I've seen Gabe and I've seen other people win a match by themselves. This type of power you cannot get in Overwatch.
No, you can't.
And in Rainbow, though that's awesome, right? With great power comes great responsibility, and I swear I buckle in my damn shoes playing that game, because the scariest thing you can hear in that damn game is what's the damn line when you're the last one? What's the line that the game tells you? It's like last member standing, like
last man standing or something like that.
Yeah, last man standing. Yeah. Oh, last friendly standing, something like that. Like
something like that. And also something that adds to that is the music that comes up in their version of Overtime. You know,
it's different.
And it's just it's pulsing and tense. It almost feels like you're in a horror movie.
It almost feels like adrenaline. Yeah, no. So it's to clear this up, when we teach this game, show this game to other people, because there's a right way to play it. When we show this game to people, we tell them, like, okay, you're the last person standing. As soon as they come out of this, like, what feels like an adrenaline shot, we tell them, like, hey, calm down. You're feeling adrenaline. Take a second. Take a breath. Because literally any one of us who's last man standing, you have the pressure of the entire team on you, and every move you make can be the difference between winning the game and losing the game, which, again, it's just a game, but the fact that you're trying to win the game for others.
In the moment. You have an audience with sometimes expectations.
Oh, for sure. Right. No, thankfully we don't do it anymore, but people still do it to us every now and again while you're in the middle of trying to win the match.
All the time to us.
Yeah, to us. Yeah, it happens to us. We used to do it to each other a lot for fun, but then it got old real quick. While you're trying to win the match, someone can try to throw you from the team. And it's so disheartening to try and fight for four other people, and then one of them's just like, you suck.
Yeah.
And it not only that, but it adds like a guilt and a sense of shame. We should say that individuals with military experience like this game because of how, even though it's not perfectly lifelike, but how it can mirror some of those things.
Right.
So we do have people who play this game by virtue of liking military simulators.
Right.
So this game definitely have me thinking about what cameras are in the room, right? How many exits are there in a room? Like how many entrances there are in a room? Like you really start to think of whatever room you're in, like in stratagem and like with strategy.
You start to be a little more tactical than maybe you're used to in your normal life, you know?
Yeah. Enemy spotted.
Yeah. Basically. And like you said, you know, it's not a perfect thing. It's not a one-to-one simulation. But it allows people that maybe have experienced certain things like these in their real lives, in their real work life, in their careers, in the military, for example. This might be a way for them to exercise some of that knowledge in a virtual space that is limited. It is contained, right? It's not like this giant map that you can go around, but it gives them the tools to exercise that in a way, and you know, in their mind. And you know, people do like that stimulus.
Oh, because it is a special type of stimulation. I mean, I think one of the reasons, aside from the camaraderie we get from our friendships and the fact that we're playing this over and over, is the fact that I consider games to be kind of drugs, right? And I think that every game is a different drug. And I can remember almost specifically, like Gabe, you, myself, Josh, saying like, "Oh, I have to play Overwatch because like nothing is like it, not in the same way." And same thing for Rainbow. And I've even gone to that. Reason why we're talking about this on the holster is because this game will change inevitably. I know Doom Eternal has come on your holster a bit more, like it's present more on your belt. You're playing it more when you're solo.
I'm playing it a little more when I'm away from the group. When people aren't online, or I see Gabe like on the dashboard playing Persona 5, and it's like, okay, this means it's safe for me to play something single player.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that flag, and it's like that white flag over there. But yeah, Doom Eternal is on my holster, as well as a couple other games. Now that we have a little more time, I've been trying to get through Catherine as well.
I've heard a lot about that one.
Yeah, which is from Atlas, the guys who make Persona and some other games. It's more of a puzzle game meets just this narrative about a relationship. But I'm trying to get through that game as well. And my backlog is pretty huge, man. But it's fun to be able to at least have some time to dig into it a little bit so I can experience those things. And you know what? Something I told Gabe about that I might not have told you about because you weren't in the party that day. I've had a copy of Nier for the longest time.
I know, you bastard.
On the PlayStation 4. I've literally gone from purchasing it to putting it on my desk to putting it inside my desk with the wrapper still on. And then maybe like 6 or 7 months ago, I took the wrapper off and installed the game. And that's the extent of my experience.
Yep. That damn game.
And it took this long for me to tell Gabe, which so we're playing on PlayStation 4, just so people know. Like most of these games we're playing on PlayStation 4.
Sure. We're preparing for the switch to PC at some point.
Yes, I am. I'm preparing for that
or at least
Switch
have both. At
at the
least have
moment.
both. Yeah, but
Yeah.
no,
Um,
I'm with you. I just wanted to let
but
everybody know that.
I also have an Xbox One, and I use their Game Pass service, which allows me to access a bunch of different catalog, kind of like Netflix. Think of it that way. But Nier Automata popped up on it, and it was like the Game of the Year edition with all of the extra content. And it's I get a notification because I have the app on my phone because I like to browse it before I come home sometimes to install something from it, which is really nice. But it showed up there in the party when I was talking with Gabe, and I was like, Gabe, I think it's time for me to play Nier Automata. He's like, why do you say that now? Well, it's literally on Game Pass, so now I have zero excuse because I literally have it on two consoles now, two
Yeah,
different
yeah.
platforms. This is the time for me to play it. So when I finish Doom, I'm gonna get into it, John. So we
That's
can
awesome.
talk about it at some point.
And I know, and I think we need to.
I
Like,
am making you that promise.
I appreciate that because that game, guys. If you have a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox, if you this game, it will mess with your head in the right ways. It has it has literally 25 endings. Four endings that are basically the mandatory the normal plot. But it literally has one for each letter of the alphabet.
That's insane.
And it is like ridiculous. It is as haphazard and interesting as life because you can die in the most random ways. But at the same time, it's also philosophical in nature. It is a very intense philosophical game that thankfully Gabriel showed to me, which I am incredibly thankful for. But I play that game once a year. Because that game reminds you of how fragile life is, of how fragile identity is. And that's what I hate free will and identity theory and philosophy. I'm so tired of those theories. I think they're definitely something for adolescence and emerging adulthood. Not saying it in a patronizing way. I just think that it's first philosophy,
Right.
which is not a problem. Everybody needs it. But this game takes the identity issues a little further. And it really like subverts expectation over and over and over and over. So as soon as you think that, hey, I got it, no, you don't, and then, hey, I got it, no, you don't, and it's so good because it honestly is that game, I swear, is a sort of life lesson. So in the same way that you like Last of Us, I really think you'll eventually, if nothing else, have an appreciation for Nier. Nier Automata is I've heard wonders about the first game, but Nier Automata, which is the second from that developer, who I should say is a madman. That developer is a madman.
He's eccentric.
He's
to say
eccentric
the least.
for sure. But yeah, it's definitely such an interesting trip. I'm happy to hear you're going to that. So I do kind of want to say we are getting to like an hour and 40 minutes.
Oh, 2 segments.
Yeah. So I kind of want to keep this last one quick.
Yeah.
And then I think we'll elaborate on it more next time, so we can I think this helped us out to talk through them. But I think I don't necessarily think we have to keep it shorter. But I think that making sure that we have like the segments in a nice position, with enough time. But I don't think we overstayed our welcome on any topic.
Also, I'll mention that
Sure.
while we do talk on a daily basis in the evenings, I haven't had this kind of conversation with you, looking at you on the camera, or like honestly this whole time it's definitely has felt like I'm sitting across from you like I'm used to, like on the weekends when you're down here.
For sure.
And that is a very valuable thing to me, John. So
no, and I say the same on my side. This is kind of, hopefully people can understand this if you've made it this far, that this is us trying to practice this in a positive way. And also to kind of catalog our stuff to kind of push forward. Like I said at the beginning, this is what happens when Todd and Jod have way too much time on their hands. But he's not lying in that sense. You and Todd and a certain list of friends, by virtue of gaming together, being around each other, meeting each other through gaming with friends and other friends, and circles of knowing each other, circles of connection. There's a list of like 6 people probably that I speak to every 48 hours. You know what I mean? At least. If we're talking every night, yeah, no, for sure. To the point that when we have stuff take us away from gaming, it can feel like, what the hell, how long has it been? But no, for sure, this has felt really good, and to have this type of conversation, it feels like I'm having coffee. Now, this is what I told you,
That's
right?
the only thing missing.
I know. Like I told you, like it's so weird. And having these meetings, I swear, I would have told you this would have felt hokey. This would have felt weird. This would have felt bad, or at least awkward. And I don't feel that. I think the difference is who you're talking to, right? And so as long as you're talking to people you know, I think the who you know makes the medium a lot more fun. Because all of us dance in this digital medium, thankfully. I'm so happy to be of the generation that we are. Nothing to the others. But I'm just happy that we both know the practical side of life, right? The everyday, we grew up without the internet. But at the same time, we've adapted to it very well.
Quite well. Yes.
Yeah, so I really do like that. So the last segment we're going to go to, if it's cool to switch, we're going to do music. Music was going to be the last one. Now, for anyone listening and you know us, you might think, why the hell are you going to stop on music if you could probably talk about that for the entire time? You and I are both avid audiophiles a little bit in our own way. We're friends with good audiophiles we're good people who just love music. It's a big thing of our
variety.
Variety of music. We definitely have a home. We definitely have metal and rock as a general staple.
Sure.
But I know I switch off into like rap, hip hop, R&B. I switch into folk, and I switch into like variations of pop as well. So I definitely think talking about music would be a lot of fun too. So did you wanna use Gabe's question?
We can, mostly because I did like I said, I'm improvising right here. I didn't come up with the section, the song of the day that we wanted to do, kind of thing. I can suggest one because I have had one stuck in my mind all day. But
that's funny.
Yeah, I don't mind talking about Gabe's question, and maybe we can offer that same question to whoever's listening to us at the moment.
Yeah, no, I would say that too. So if you're listening to this and you feel like it's a random morbid shot of the dark, you can blame our good friend Gabriel for it. He shot us with this morbid question while we were gaming, which it's not morbid to us. I think it's just a funny question, and it kind of normalizes a little bit of what we're talking about here.
Sure.
Sorry if it's morbid, but what song do you want or would you like to be played at your funeral, right? Now, do you remember Gabe's? He had
a few different ones.
Yeah,
he had one from Yellow Card. I just don't remember what it was called.
That I could have placed a bet on.
He likes his pop punk.
He likes the Yellow Card, man. From the day I've met him, basically that band has been in his mouth. But it's not a bad thing though, because I understand we all have I have a Dream Theater jacket behind me, but
nice. Well, actually, I have you can barely see it. It's right there. That's the
I see it
of all time.
I see it. That's Queens of the Stone Age.
Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah,
like clockwork.
Like clockwork. Yeah, that freaking album. Man, I'm gonna listen to that album. That album is legit.
John, when all this is nice and done, we're gonna get together and we're gonna listen to that
on
thing.
vinyl.
That is this it is my favorite physical item. One of my favorites.
It's
and I cherish it.
A modern day classic. That one, just so adventurous.
Sorry to take away. Continue.
No. And that's kind of the point, right? The reason why we're talking about this segment, right? Because for some people, it might be like, it's just another segment. It's music. The reason why we're able to have this conversation is because you and I are both audiophiles. You and I have the production rig. You and I have all this stuff. We love music to the point that we've been fascinated to even own mixers ourselves, to have all this stuff. And it just, we have a fascination with this shit. Music got me through high school. Music got me through school, period. And so I can definitely say that I profess a love for it. I can play. I'm a musician on my side. I don't think you are actively, but you have music history, right? Saxophone.
Yeah, I can write music, but the knowledge that I gained in middle school and high school, that's kind of where it stopped. I didn't pursue it more, but I appreciate it. I understand it to an extent.
No, it's foot in the door for sure. So I want to say, right, so with that, like, what song came to mind? There is a band out there called, and so maybe this can lean into our song of the day, right? Because I wanted to be able to do a song of the day. If you listen to this, you can listen to these songs and maybe come up with your own opinion. But mine is the Decemberists. the Mariner's Revenge song, which is basically a sea shanty. If you don't know what a
Right.
sea shanty is, guys, you gotta get in on this. There's just nothing else like singing a random song to the tune of a bunch of other random people singing it with you in a happy, loving state. It is a really, really interesting form of song, outlined by like what Assassin's Creed 4, right? Black Flag.
Yeah, so Assassin's Creed 4, I'm gonna look back into the gaming, is a pirate game, and it had a ton of sea shanties. A lot of them, I think, some even made for the game, but a lot of them were of tradition.
Yeah,
You know?
for sure. They had some like historical context. And so my song that I would love to be played at my funeral is the Mariner's Revenge song by the Decemberists, because of how it's a stark and sober song in the sense of the stuff that it's talking about, because it's called a revenge song, right? But it's fantastical and it's historic in the sense of what it's talking about, of like real people lived this type of life back then. And the fact that it's about 8 to 10 minutes of what feels like what a group of people could be singing. And I've been at a party where we have sang it, and there's just nothing I would crave more at my funeral than a bunch of my friends drunk and lollygagging over stupid things, and just having a ball. No, as morbid as it all may be, the ball keeps spinning, things keep rolling. And I'd want nothing more than my friends to kind of just, like plaster down and get drunk and just sing together. And just kind of, yeah, everyone's livers get all drunk and everybody sing together.
Yeah, don't worry, I will learn it.
It's a lovely song. It's a lovely song in the sense of it's a shanty, but it is stark. It is intense.
I get you.
What was yours?
And real quick, I feel that on any given day, we can definitely change that song depending on
sure.
our mood, right?
Yeah,
I went through a couple different songs myself, but one that I came to was a little older, or it's from the 90s. That definitely ages me. I should tell you though, I went to listen to it after that evening because I hadn't done so in years. It must have been since I started college that I listened to the song. And it's a Metallica song. It's from the Reload album, which is not very popular. Those Load and Reload were them kind of.
I was about to say, you told me the title of it, and I called that it was from that album. You told me the title, and I was like, I could guarantee you it's on one of the two albums that nobody liked. Not because the albums weren't good. The albums were good. The reason why people didn't like those albums was because it was Metallica gone mainstream.
Yeah,
like
basically.
That's why they didn't like those albums. King Nothing and a few other random songs come off.
Good.
Yeah, it's good stuff, but it's just alternative Metallica.
Basically,
it's alt Metallica. But sorry, you were saying. Yeah.
No, you're on the money. Most of those two albums are kind of, they just go everywhere. There's some heavy riffs. There's some really melodic stuff,
awkward stuff.
Really good songwriting, though, in my opinion, at least. There's a lot of feeling going into it. So Low Man's Lyrics is, I believe, the album closer for Reload, which I didn't look this up, but I believe came out in like 1998 or 1999, and then after that was the Garage album, which is just a bunch of covers. You remember that one?
Yeah.
There's some good stuff on there too.
Dude,
but the song
Whiskey in the Jar off of Garage.
Whiskey in the Jar.
Dude, Whiskey in the Jar is a fun one. Turn the Page comes off that too, I think.
Yeah. That one's a little more acoustic.
I mean, that one's like almost trying to copy. But out of almost in a sense of respect. It's not like flagrant, like stealing.
So Low Man's Lyrics is a mostly acoustic song, but there's a harmonica involved, and it's kind of slow. And it's about 7 or 8 minutes, actually.
I think that's exactly what caught me, is that you said James Hetfield was on a harmonica, and I was like, that is Load Reload, my friend. I was like, yeah, I could bet money on that.
Yeah, so the lyrics are very somber, which is I guess is fitting, and what I always thought, at least what it meant to me, there's a lyric in the song where James Hetfield sings what is done and to do, which I think for me it almost sounds like, what's done is done. Like if this is going to be played at my funeral, I want people to understand that I would probably have come to accept the thing that is happening.
Sure.
And I'm relating to people through the song. It's more for them and less for me. I want people to understand it's okay. Like you said, the world continues to move on, and you will continue to live. And maybe you'll remember me, maybe you won't, but there'll be that moment where you maybe will understand.
Yeah, and accept that, right? Accept that that you hopefully it portrays that you understood what was coming.
You know what? I didn't really think about it, but maybe you'll understand is literally in lyrics. And I didn't think about that.
That's funny.
That just came out of nowhere.
Which kind of underlies why it's right, I think.
Yeah.
There are a few songs that I think that we, like you said, it could switch every day. I'm kind of surprised, not surprised that you went with Metallica. I actually that inspired me to listen to Metallica's "Injustice for All" when I went on my jog.
So good.
Oh my god. It's just so hard to think back on all that Metallica's been. But no, for sure. I'm glad that we both I think it's a weird exercise to think about this type of stuff, but it's just an exercise for the sake of, right? So would you recommend that song for Song of the Day? Or do you want to put another one?
Sorry?
Or do you want to put another one?
Well, I mean, this is a topic at hand. For Song of the Day, I think that we were just thinking about something that we're currently in our mind, right?
Yeah.
So just so people know, I haven't listened to Metallica in such a long time because despite my age, I tend to now keep up with more modern stuff in those similar genres.
Yeah, for sure. Same.
I really do. There's a song that comes to mind right now that has been stuck in my head from a metalcore band called Veil of Maya. I know you've heard of them.
I saw you talking about it in the forum, the chat earlier.
Yeah, so I only started listening to them recently because the concert that I was supposed to go to a couple weeks ago, they were on the ticket. It was Dance Gavin Dance,
Animals as Leaders,
Yep, Royal Coda.
Yep.
And Veil of Maya. Now that has been rescheduled, like I mentioned earlier, August. Royal Coda is gone. Wolf and Bear are on there. I know maybe people don't know who these bands are, but I'm just telling you.
Yeah. No.
But Veil of Maya was still there, and I'm like, well, okay, don't listen to them a whole lot. Let me give their discography a listen. And holy crap, it is awesome.
Yeah,
I love it's what I like about newer metal now, and these like subgenres of metalcore,
it's funny. It's
much
funny
more
that
creative.
you called it new metal when it's literally.
I know
one of
it's
the genres.
not actually new metal. It's what I mean.
I know. It's just hilarious. But sorry, you're saying? It's fucking genre.
Yeah, no, it's funny. But yeah, so it's got some harsh vocals, which is like the screaming kind of thing. And if you're not familiar, but what a lot of this different metal does now is that they mold together the harsh vocals, which is like the screaming kind of stuff that you hear about all the time if you're not familiar with metal.
Yeah.
And then they have like actual singing, which are just the cleans,
the harmonies, the
exactly. Yeah. And this band, they have like this jumpy, groovy kind of feel to them. It's really heavy, but then there are moments of this just like explosion of like, we're gonna get you out of this rut of this kind of this riff that we're going with. And their more recent song is a single. It's just a single. It hasn't. There's no album out yet. It's called Members Only, and this one came out last year. And the art of a lot of their albums, they have a lot of like Cthulhu kind of stuff going on there. There's tentacles in every single cover art. So this one in particular, it's a silhouette opening a door. He's surrounded by water, and there's tentacles coming through the door and a light behind it. And I feel like, and it's kind of purple. It's got like this purple kind of haze to it, and it feels like that is a great representation of what the music is, because it's showing you this kind of dark. It's a dark theme, but there's color in there, and there's like this vibrancy in there, and it comes through in the music. They add a lot of, in this song at least, along with the heavy riffs and stuff. They add this colorful like synth to it. There's some cool like keyboard stuff going on that's a little different from what I'm used to in those genres. But I was so surprised by that song that I just had to dig into the rest of their stuff.
I want you to send me
I'm going to send it to you. You have to. You're going to listen to it.
That's fine by me. That's fine by me. Hey, you got to listen to Mariner's Revenge. But I'm with you because I do want to check out Veil of Maya. I've had friends who are into Veil of Maya for a long time. And I got to admit, there are a couple songs that I've liked, but I rarely liked the whole album. But it also has been like 3 years since I've even heard of a new Veil of Maya thing. Not to say they haven't done it. I'm sure they've been consistent, but at least as much as the band should be. So no, I'm down to check that out because metal might be something like a weird topic for some people, but like metal is something that calls to you. I think it's. I've seen all walks of life listen to metal, and I love it. But I do think that there's some interesting balance between the heavy, vocals, the heavy metal, and then like the melodic parts that they can put in there, and that contrast. You know what I mean?
It's peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking like, is that Family Guy scene where like the cars hit each other and he got his chocolate and my peanut butter. I honestly feel like that's what it is with metal. Especially for certain types of metal that just do harmony so well. I think that's why bands like Veil of Maya do well. I think that's the reason. Now, Veil of Maya leans a little bit harder, at least when I heard it, into the heavy. But I do think that there are metal bands out there like Gent and Periphery and Animals as Leaders and hell, even Protest the Hero and things like that. They really combine the heavy and the melodic, which makes for like this really interesting combo. So that's going to be your song of the day.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with it. I listened to it today when I went for a run, and then yesterday I listened to like 2 albums straight. From them, which is the previous one, which came out in 2017, called Idol or False Idol, and then from 2015 called Matriarch. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I was told by our friend Josh, who knows a lot more about this band than I do, they switched vocalists because at the time he was only doing harsh vocals and they wanted someone to do harsh and cleans.
Which happens a lot in metal, for those who don't know.
Yeah. And I think it sounds great. I think it's unique for their sound. And it's very clear to me that they have a lot of fun with experimentation. And as somebody who has obviously grew up with metal, like the classic metal, Metallica and stuff like that, obviously I mentioned them as a song I'd play at my funeral. I think it's really great for people to think outside the box. And that's what attracts me more in those genres, because I did leave metal for a while. I'm going to talk about that for a second. I left it for a while after I started college because I was so bored of it. It was just same thing.
We have friends who are like that today. Like,
we do.
Who have gotten tired of metal, and I understand. Too much of anything can be a bad thing, man. There's more music
now is
out
a really
there
good time to come back into it because there's some variety in it.
Oh no, for sure. Metal has changed. So with that, I kind of want to say mine, and the only reason I blame you because you brought the album out. So you pointed at the album, and there's a song of the day, right? If I already mentioned Mariner's Revenge, if you want to try that one out, that one's a really interesting sea shanty. But the Vampire of Time and Memory is back there. We're talking about Queens of the Stone Age. You're fine. I didn't mess with anything. We're talking about Queens of the Stone Age. And he's showing me the artwork, the lovely vinyl, which is
nobody else can see this. You can find a picture of it somewhere on Amazon or something.
But yeah, that looks so great. Such a minimal, such a damn good album with good artwork, good production, good everything. But there's a song on there that's somber. It's the Vampire of Time and Memory, and it's really interesting to go through that song because it really has like as someone who's not really a believer, right? I kind of love how that song starts. I think it's one line or two, maybe a verse in, where he says like, "I want God to come and take me home," right? Because I'm all alone in this crowd. And it's like a wonderfully placed heavy line, but the music that's playing to it is not sad. It's sad, but has like a joyous touch to it. And just a bright chord, and it just feels so good that even just thinking about it, I can hear it in my head, and I'm gonna jam to it later, and I get chills thinking about it because that album, if not that, just the self-titled track, Like Clockwork.
So good.
Those 2 tracks are like, they will hit my soul. Anytime I hear that soft piano at the beginning of Vampire of Time and Memory, I am just done. I'm like, I'm in. I would listen to this. And yup, so steady, so chill, so unassuming. But yet that song will hit you. It is such a good song.
It's excellent song.
So yeah, I would say the Vampire, yes, Queens of the Stone Age, the Vampire of Time and Memory, off of the album Like Clockwork. Dude, I'm telling you, it's gonna be an event.
This is a double vinyl.
Dude, I am so. We need to, whether it's just you and I or a bunch of friends together, I don't care, but just getting together in the room, not having a TV on,
Yes.
Right? Not think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Not having a visual distraction when around a bunch of people. I want to have like just playing that music, some drinks, some fun, and just letting that album, be the music for us talking.
Yeah.
That album is legit.
Yeah, there's obviously we have a connection to it because when this album came out, and I just constantly drilled it into people's heads, not like incessant thing, but I'm like,
dude, it was life when it came out.
Age.
That album was life when it came out. Like
for me, it was.
It hit me. No, I had I was in a band that time, and we were of a genre that like we listened to stuff like this, and we listened to albums together at that time, and we would get together and drink and listen to stuff, and talk about our day. It was a bunch of frugal guys didn't want to really lean into tech, and they didn't want to watch TV and stuff.
Right.
Total hippie college stuff. And yeah, like when I heard that album and when I heard it with them and when all of us were together, like it is such a crazy thing to go through that album. That album is a masterpiece. And that's the only song that I do not have an intimate attachment to is the beginning, only because of how intensely off-putting the tones are that it starts with. But it's
really sharp.
It's built to do that though. Like that's the intent of the song. And so with that, I can't even fault it. But I still love that song by virtue of it being on that album. It is the most unsettling start to an amazing album. Because they do that. They unsettle you at the start.
Multiple times throughout the album. Sometimes when you almost forget about it and then it creeps back up.
That lo-fi, phasey, hazy sound that you feel like you're not connected fully.
It almost feels like a dream.
It does. It feels hazy. I think a really good word for that album is hazy. Sorry for song of the day turning to album of the day, but last thing, and then we'll call it. And anyone who sees this first track is going to be like, Jesus Christ, shut up, guys, because we just crossed the 2-hour line.
It's okay.
It's podcast long form, right? So this last thing I want to talk about is an interesting point of challenge of the day. Now, we won't be able to know these, and we don't know that we'll get any because who knows who's going to make it to the end of these, right? And it might be a while, but I do want to keep this going. If anybody's listening, especially if you know us, right? Especially if you know us. But if you don't know us still, what is this song? By virtue of you listening to what type of music we like, you have an idea of what realm we're in. What is a song that you think that we should probably listen to? Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to like the song. It doesn't mean you have to think we're going to enjoy the song. But I pride myself on loving music. So, I mean, I'll listen to anything once. So if you send me something, even if it's absurd, I will listen to it just to have an opinion on it. So I think it'd be fun to have a challenge of the day. Yeah,
I second that. And I'll just add that if you know me personally, you probably know what kind of genres I'm really not into so much. If you know those, maybe suggest a song to me that will maybe change my mind. And we will see.
Yeah, something that can actually kind of test us. I'm always down to go into it. It's happened to me a few times where I've been pleasantly surprised, and ever since then, I don't mind giving something at least one spin. Whether or not it'll be spun again, that's a different question. But
of course, but at least you listen to it.
Yeah, the one spin. I'm down to end it there. Are you good?
Yeah, same. John, thank you for putting this together. And to anyone who's listening, thank you for listening this far if you have.
I feel like the only person is going to be Gabe.
He has a lot of time in his hands right now.
at least
he watches. Real quick, he watches my Twitch clips that I believe nobody watches. And anytime I go look at the archive, I see one view, and I'm like, "That's Gabe."
That's Gabe.
He saw this entire 3-hour BS stream that I did just for fun.
Yep.
And thank you.
That's what I'm saying.
Appreciate that.
So Gabe, if you made it to the end of this, hello. We know you're there.
We love you.
And we love you, man. I hope that you continue listening to our blabbering. But with that, I'm down to call it there. Todd, thank you for joining me. And we're just going to do this at least weekly just to have some fun and just to kind of keep ourselves entertained and keep us away from cabin fever.
Yes, that's important.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Todd, you have a good one, and we'll talk later.
Likewise. Stay safe, guys.